Well, hello again. We find ourselves here at a truck stop in Pennsylvania, right near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And if you're going to transport vehicles, you better get used to this sight of pretty much living in a truck stop. And as the years go on, you grow fond of the smell of old trucker urine. I have a few safety tips I'd like to share with you while I have your attention here. Let's talk about following the vehicle in front of you. If you're going to race down the road and tailgate people at any time during this business opportunity, find another occupation, because you will soon be in deep, deep trouble. As we talked about the stopping distance of vehicles, a lot of these vehicles, either RVs or trucks that you're going to move, do not have an excess of braking power. So, as a general rule, when you stop at a light, do not ever exceed the point where you cannot see the car or truck in front of you's rear tires. So if you stop and you cannot see those rear tires, you're closer than that, you are in danger of slamming into them, because a lot of these trucks have stuff that hangs over the front end. RVs have extra long front ends, and if that person does anything at all, you're going to bump into them. Now let's talk about traveling down the highway. You're traveling down the highway 60 miles an hour, and the rule of thumb is 1 second for every 10 mile an hour you're traveling. So at 60 miles an hour, you'll hear the old timers say it's the 5-second rule. How they determine this is the vehicle in front of you, you're going to pick a guardrail or a sign or a bridge or something and start counting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And when you hit 5,000, you should be just passing that guardrail, sign, or bridge, which gives you the old school distance to be following. Now, I lived by this rule for years thinking, hey, this is pretty cool. Well, I got into a 92,000 pound crane, and I guess I didn't check the stopping distance of that crane enough. When I got a hold of it, I just wasn't conscious of the weight or the ability to stop, and my 5-second rule, I'm following it. All of a sudden, a deer jumps out in front of the truck 2 vehicles ahead of me. This truck, it was a pickup truck with a trailer, he slams on the brakes, jackknives the car behind him, slams into him, and the whole thing comes to a dead stop right in front of me. I start downshifting and jamming on the brakes, and I went around this mess on the right hand side and still did not stop for about 150 foot past where the pickup truck struck the deer and past the 2 vehicles piled into each other. And I figured out that 5 seconds is not enough stopping power. I went to 10 seconds, which that's, if you're paying attention, 10 seconds is enough time to stop a heavy truck. In a car, 5 seconds is more than plenty. But when you're talking about these heavy trucks and cranes and RVs with trailers, RVs towing a car, whatever you're doing, you got to consider the extra weight and the lack of stopping power, because some of these were just not designed to stop. They're designed to go down the road. Now, let's talk about going down the road. Most vehicles I have found are equipped to travel the most economically on the highway between 55 and 60, maybe 65. And what you're going to do is keep very close track of your mileage, especially if there's a trip computer on that vehicle, because this mileage is coming straight out of your pocket or profit. And at the end of the week, if you're, instead of running 55, I try to run about 5 to 10 miles under the posted speed limit, mostly to get the best mileage. Sure, you're going to make a lot of friends, and a lot of people are going to tell you that you are number one in West Virginia or Virginia or wherever you're traveling because you're going slower than they are doing 90 miles an hour and trying to get around you. But you'll find out that even 5 miles an hour difference means hundreds of dollars at the end of the month, maybe thousands, in fuel consumption. So if you're doing, say, 55, even 60, the difference between 60 and 65, you're going to drop off, oh my goodness, 3 or 4 or 5 miles of the gallon. Now, you will be traveling down the road at between 50 and 65 miles an hour, and you will notice that your RPM and your horsepower curve really start to make that vehicle feel like it's going down the road with no problem at all. It's called the sweet spot. So there's two ways to find a sweet spot. One is by long distance and mileage, checking your mileage at 55, checking it at 60, checking it at 65, and finding out where that best mileage is if you want to make money at this thing. If you don't care about it, you just want to see the scenery as fast as you can, give them hell, because these trucks will suck fuel down faster than you can put it in. Also, a sweet spot is to find another vehicle that's traveling at the comfortable speed that your sweet spot matches. And I've tagged in behind trucks or campers and traveled hundreds of miles behind them because they're traveling at the correct speed that you want to save the most money. Now, while I have your attention, let's talk about dual wheels. Dual wheels are put on a truck or an RV to handle the weight and stabilize the vehicle going down the road. There probably was never a better invention after somebody invented the wheel in the caveman days. But the minute that first tire on your dual wheel slips off the pavement, those dual wheels become your worst enemy. And let me tell you why. Now, your natural reaction if you slide off the edge of the road with anything, RV, pickup truck, single axle, or especially duals, when you slide off the road, and you will tend to want to steer back on the road immediately, and what you end up doing is the duals are going to stay, they want to stay off the road. The front steer tires are going to want to correct you on it, and you will end up whipping that vehicle and oversteering it, and probably in a heavy truck or a fragile load. We'll talk about fragile loads a little bit later if we haven't talked about them already. On a fragile load or a heavy truck, you'll oversteer and tip that thing right over as easy as pie. So, your tire goes off the road and it starts pulling you towards the edge of the road. Instinct is to fight the wheel and steer back on the road. It ain't gonna happen. Now, what you do is you travel off the road, you take the truck and both duals on the right side off the edge of the road. It works just as well on the left side, but you don't tend to go off on the left side quite so often. You will take that dual off the road, the whole vehicle, into the breakdown lane just off the edge of whatever berm or thing you're fighting with, the edge of the road, and get control, total control of the vehicle. And then, and only then, you will come back onto the surface in one move. So your steers come on and your drivers come on. Drivers are the tires that the axle has a pumpkin in it and a drive shaft to it. Okay, anything else is just a tag axle that lifts up with air to come on and off the ground, or a trailer axle. The steer tires are the ones that you have that are connected to your steering wheel. They're always in the front that I know of. So let's talk about dual wheels. Now, it's fine when you have one set of duals, but if you have 7 axles back there and only one steer axle, some of them have 2 steer axles, still with 2 steer axles, 7 times 4, you're talking 28 tires, and half of those are gonna wanna be off the road. You've got 1, maybe 2 tires up front steering that wanna go back onto the road. There is no way no way you're going to overpower all of those rear axles, whether they are drive or whether they're air axles. The only salvation you have is to get that truck off the road enough so you have it under control and sweep it back on all in one move. If you have the option of pulling your air axles up off the ground at this point and you're not too far overloaded, it's a smart thing to do. If you are close to your maximum capacity or you're slightly overloaded, pulling those air axles off the ground is going to overload the trailer tires and the drive wheels tires. It's going to overload them to the max. They are not going to go far down the road before they overheat and blow. So it's a concern. Now, if you're on wet or slippery or snowy or icy conditions and you've got 20 tires behind you all trying to go straight, and you, like a poor sap, are in the front trying to steer 28 tires with one axle or even two, good luck. The truck is made, the tires are designed, and they're going to try to be the boss to take you straight down the road. I don't give a damn which way you steer on slippery roads. You're pretty much going to go in a straight line. So the worse road conditions are, the more your stopping distance should drastically increase. The minute it gets a little bit slippery or wet or hydroplaney or anything like that, that distance at 5 seconds, you should be 10 seconds. But the 10 seconds wouldn't hurt to jump back to 15 or 20 seconds off the vehicle in front of you. So as you're trying to turn, especially slower speeds, pulling them air axles up sometimes is the only way to get that truck steering. Okay, now while I have your attention, I really quickly want to talk about your axle lockouts. On your heavy trucks with more than one axle, sometimes even with one axle, and you get in a sticky spot or you get stuck, which is very possible, where one or the other side of the tires are spinning, on your dash you will find differential lockout switches. Now first off, you're going to take and lock out the axle from left to right so the tires both on that axle turn at the same speed. So if you're stuck, you're going to get the maximum amount of traction to get you out of there. Where you end up having more than one axle, I've had up to 3 sets of drive axles. So each one of those axles have a switch to lock it to the other side. But you also have a differential lock between axles, which will lock that number 1 axle to the number 2 axle. If you have 3 axles driving, to the 3. Your air axles, I've had as many as 7 axles back there with 3 drives. I've actually had 4 drives before. Anyway, and the rest of them are all air. You can lift them up to get the weight or the part that you're stuck, get those tires out of the mud. And it also puts all the weight on your drive tires, which should give you more traction if it doesn't sink you up over your eyelids. But when you lock these axles together, every tire between those locks is going to be turning at the same pace. It uses up a ton of fuel and it uses up a ton of horsepower, but if you're stuck, no other way out besides a wrecker, these differential locks will save your can. And you will eventually, if you're bad enough stuck, you'll lock the axle to itself, left to right, and then to the next axle behind it, and then the next axle behind that. So you have every tire on the truck traveling at the same pace. The danger is, once you lock all these axles together, there is no way to turn that truck, because you have up to 28 tires all driving at the same speed, going in the same direction. They're just about physically no way. You've got to unlock those differentials to get yourself turned. And we'll go into more on axles a little bit later. Thank you.